Hello, and thank you for tuning in to McDougall's Medicine with Dr. John and Mary McDougall. I'm their daughter and your host, Heather McDougall. And tonight, just like every night, I will try to get to as many questions as I possibly can. But first, I would like to talk to you, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall and Mary. Hi, hello. I know you want to talk about something that's very near and dear to your heart tonight, and we'll start out with that.
Yeah, I'm going to get to questions, but there's something I really think it's important for me to share with you. And that's has to do with not only my job as a doctor, and a doctor is very interested in the health of his patients from every point of view. And one of those points of view that the medical profession has taken on, and I have with enthusiasm, is the health of people on this planet. Now, we just went through the wildfires in Maui, which was our home for 15 years. That's where we started the McDougall program. That's where we had our 3 children. That's really where our life begins. And I have to tell you, that's where we think about our home being, is in the Hawaiian Islands. And we spent a lot of time in Maui, lived on the Big Island, and lived on Oahu, but we spent 15 years of our life there. And of course, to see what happened in Maui over this past week was really tough for us. And in fact, it made us relive what happened to us in October of 2017. We were the first people, Heather, Mary, and I, and some of our staff, that lost their homes in the wildfires. We lost 5,000 homes. We lost everything except for a computer, a pair of glasses, and a phone, and our pajamas. And we got out of the place alive. And believe me, it was just by a few seconds, by the grace of God, and also by the efforts of Heather's 3 children, who almost broke down the door to wake Mary and I up. And as we got into the car and drove away, the flames were around us. So I can really relate to what's going on. And not only that, you have to understand, in addition to me being a doctor concerned about people and patients and the planet, is I have 7 grandchildren, and I want to do whatever I can to help them have a future. I'm going to introduce you, as I have a couple of weeks ago, to what I believe is the only hope for planet Earth. And it's going to be tough. It's not going to be an easy thing to accomplish. But when you start looking around, as I have, and consider the possibilities and how serious things are, this is what they call it, global boiling. It's really tough out there. I'm not going to go through it with you. I just want to give you some ray of hope. I want to show you that there is an option that we have to save the planet, at least in part. And I feel it's my obligation to share that with you. I'd like you to pay close attention for the next 5 minutes. And Heather will give you the links to this video that I want you to share with everybody and anybody. We've got to start a mass movement just to begin thinking like this. They already have. I heard a newscast last week that talked about painting our roofs white to reflect the sun's energy. Well, painting the roofs white is one way to do it. And we probably should. But let me see if I can get your attention for about 5 minutes, and then we'll go back to my day job.
Discussions about the threat of global warming generally focus on the link between mankind's greenhouse gas emissions and rapidly rising temperatures, along with the idea that reducing future emissions can limit temperature rise to survivable levels. This premise is dangerously wrong. When the lag time for full impact of atmospheric CO2 is taken into account, it becomes apparent that current levels are already sufficient to cause deadly temperature increases within the next few decades. Furthermore, civilization and positive feedback loops continue releasing more CO2 and methane each year, adding to the already unsustainable levels at an ever-increasing pace. At present, there is no way to effectively reduce atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations fast enough to prevent these lethal temperature increases. Direct air capture is not practical on a large scale due to the huge energy and material requirements needed to remove highly dispersed CO2 from the atmosphere. And while adding trees and other vegetation is a worthwhile goal, It would require centuries to measurably reduce CO2 concentrations, even if their coverage were doubled. Since current CO2 levels are already too high, and we have no way to effectively reduce them in time, our only option is to decouple the temperature problem from the CO2 problem. When some of the sun's energy is reflected back into space by surfaces on Earth, it has an overall cooling effect on the planet. This phenomenon is called the albedo effect. Solar radiation management is the concept of raising the albedo of the Earth to thereby absorb less of the sun's energy, stabilizing and then reducing temperatures to allow the time needed for humanity to transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral energy model, while nature-based solutions slowly reduce greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. The MIR framework is a comprehensive plan to deploy mirror arrays for local and global temperature reduction and clean energy production. Using glass mirrors to modify reflectivity and heat absorption at the planet's surface is a solution that is ready to be deployed today. The MIR framework meets material and energy constraints and encourages global collaborative implementation and controllability, while enhancing food system security and resilience. It also addresses the root problem of global warming via the production of clean solar thermal energy. Materials to make mirrors are abundant throughout the world, and they can be manufactured using solar thermal energy. Once deployed, the mirrors are easily configured into arrays that will last for decades while requiring very little maintenance, and will immediately begin reflecting solar energy away from the planet to reduce temperatures on both local and global scales. All materials used are easily recycled, and arrays can be enlarged, reduced, or moved as needed to balance weather and temperature trends as the Earth is gradually cooled and carbon is removed from the atmosphere. Solar radiation management using glass mirrors can be an integral part of the comprehensive energy rebalancing, which will be required to achieve a sustainable, enjoyable life on this planet for all living things. Please go to mirrorreflection.com for more information and the opportunity to donate or participate in this vital endeavor.
Okay, well, thank you for listening. In 2004, I heard Al Gore tell me about the global warming problem. 19 years ago, I got passionately interested in the fate of our planet because I had the birth of my first grandchild. Al Gore told us the solution to the problem was to get hold of the CO2 production that's being made on this planet by having better transportation that uses renewable energy. And I thought that was a good idea. Al Gore didn't talk about the contribution of animal agriculture to solving the problems. And as you heard me state before, and probably from other people, half of the greenhouse gases are a consequence of the animal agriculture business. And the really positive thing that you need to think about as an individual, and we need to, of course, bring this up to a planetary scale, is you can reduce your production of CO2 by 80% overnight by changing to a starch-based diet. They call it a vegan diet. I thought that was enough, but unfortunately, what's happened in the last, well, this has been 18 years since Al Gore told us that we're in big trouble. Because I've seen nothing but CO2 production increase. I look outside my window and I see thousands of cars go by every day. I just can't see it happening. And plus, we've already exceeded, as this presentation showed you, we've already exceeded what the planet can tolerate in terms of CO2 and methane for, they said, decades, probably hundreds of years. So we need another approach. And when you come to the realization that we don't have very many options, I hope you remember this mirrored video, and I hope you can share it with your friends and relatives. We got to start someplace. We've got to consider what the options are, and this, I believe, is a real option. I knew Dr. Yi Tao. I first interviewed him in July of last year, and you could see the interview I did with him at our Diet Climate website, which I hope you visited so far. It teaches people on this planet how to follow a climate-friendly diet. Of course, that's the McDougall diet, a starch-based diet. And that's at McDougallfoundation.org. That's McDougallfoundation.org, not .com. And you'll see Mary's and my and Heather's efforts to try and get people to change their diet. It's going to become a real option for people very shortly as far as changing their diet. Well, I used the wrong word. It's not going to be an option. It's going to be a reality because that's basically the food that's going to be available. Rice and corn and potatoes, et cetera. We can't waste it on the animals. Anyway, I met Dr. Yi Tao. He's a brilliant man, to say the least. And I'm going to give you a chance to meet him. We've had many discussions. There's an interview that I did with him, as I told you. You can find it at the McDougallfoundation.org, or when you go to the MIR website, that interview that I did with Dr. Tao is present. The important thing to understand is that these mirrors can be made, in fact, it's his plan, made out of waste plastic bottles and aluminum cans. And they cost about $10 a piece. They can be manufactured all over the world. The technology's available, everything's available except the will to do something. And that's going to come from us as people, as the residents of this planet, demanding that we save our home. And decoupling or uncoupling CO2 from heat is what we have to do. That's all we're left with. So I'm going to bring Dr. Yi Tao to this 5 o'clock meeting sometime in the near future. I hope you take the trouble to visit the MIR website and to get to know Dr. Yi Tao. I think you'll be impressed, to say the least. And those of you who are inclined to do so, those of you who are scientists, those who say you love science, look up the research that he cites and see whether or not it's true. I believe it's true. I wouldn't waste your time if I didn't think this is an option you need to know about and spread. It's got to start someplace. Anyway, Heather, you have any questions about what we should do? Well, what questions do people have about health? Because that I'm an expert on. Climate change, I'm not, but as I mentioned, I'm a doctor and I'm concerned about the health of my patients and they need a home.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Dad. I know it's important to you, and the health of our planet is really important. Like you said, if we don't have a planet to live on, what good is our health, right? And seeing what's happening.
Heather, I want to ask you, how
how
have you felt this week? What has this week meant to you to watch our home? You were born on the Hawaiian Islands. And did it bring back feelings of October 2017?
Absolutely. I know what they're going through right now. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want anybody else to have to go through this, but unfortunately, the future is pretty much locked in. And what was once uncommon, and we didn't get a lot of attention when our homes burnt down in October 2017. But you may get a lot of attention in the near future.
Well, since then, there's been a large wildfire almost every year.
All right. And when we have wintertime, the southern hemisphere is going through the same thing we're going through right now. Tremendous heat. You cannot deny the heat. You've got to do something about it. You figure out what to do. Carbon capture is not going to work. You're not going to be able to plant enough trees. It's not going to work to make everybody vegan on this planet, even though I'd like to do so tomorrow. So what are you going to do? Yi Tao's his name. MIR.org is the website. Share it with everybody you can find. Play them this video. Heather put the YouTube and the Vimeo locations links in your chat. I'm not going to stop mentioning this. I'm sorry. So you might as well just, tune me out if you decided that Dr. McDougall has no place in discussing this subject, or if you think this is political or anything else you want to use for an excuse to deny what's going on. I'm going to be here. I'm not going to stop.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's 5:15, so I'd like to move on to all of the health questions pouring in. I get them by email and they come in through the chat here, so you all have to understand that there's no way I can possibly get to all the questions, but I'll do my best. So first question from Nicole. She's wondering if you can eat just rice and veggies every day for lunch and dinner with no beans if you have more than 50 pounds to lose.
Absolutely. Rice and vegetables would be just fine. You're getting a little too much protein, but it's okay. The body can handle that much protein. Now, why do I know that? Well, rice is a little bit acidic. Okay, and it's the acid that is being neutralized by the bones that causes osteoporosis. So you can handle the amount of protein that's in rice, the amount of extra protein. Same thing with vegetables, like lettuce is about 35% protein. You need 3% of your
Who
calories.
would believe that?
I know, it's because there's hardly any calories in lettuce. That's why. Lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, they're like 35 to 50% protein. So you're going to get an excess protein. You're not going to have to worry about any deficiencies except for B12, which is something we discuss on occasion because we have to discuss it. But your chances of becoming B12 deficient are almost none. And it'll take 20 to 30 years to run out of your B12 stores on average. So we could get into that later. But yeah, you can live on rice and vegetables. Who does it? Well, how about 2 billion Asians? They did pretty good. For 1980, 2 billion Asians lived on white rice as 90% of their diet. I've talked to you about Walter Kempner. Walter Kempner at Duke University. Remember the rice diet? He cured really disabled, sick people with a diet of rice, fruit juice, and table sugar. Never had to worry about protein. Protein is the last thing you have to worry about. And anyway, you can read about Walter Kempner's work on my website. You can do your own past history and observations. There have been billions of people who have lived on rice and vegetables. No beans. You don't need beans. In fact, beans are like 28% protein. Remember, you need 3% of your calories as protein. If you're pregnant or nursing, you need 6% of your calories as protein. Never going to happen. Sweet potatoes are 6% protein, maybe 3%, but probably 6%. Rice is about 8% protein. Potatoes are 10% protein. I would guess it's protein you're worried about. The other thing is, as far as your vitamins go, vegetables are loaded with A and C, vitamin A and C. Starches, grains, are deficient in A and C. So by adding vegetables, you've added the A and C. You got all the vitamins, all the minerals. You're going to get vitamin D from the sunshine. Yeah, it's an ideal diet. So enjoy yourself, and you'll lose the 50 pounds. If you look at Walter Kempner's work, you can see he published 107 cases of people who had massive obesity. That means they had more than 100 pounds each to lose. And you can see the results. They were phenomenal, eating rice and vegetables. Yes, he didn't limit the amount of food that people were allowed when they started, but not after a while. Again, you can look back at the fact that there are no overweight Asians, or at least once there weren't. In China, Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, nobody was overweight. Now, of course, especially the business people, look just like Americans, don't they? All right, Heather, I'll go on really fast.
Okay, next question. This is from Heather. She wrote in, and I've gotten a few questions about this recently. There's a new book that just came out called Toxic Superfoods. I don't know who it's by, I'm sorry. But I think a lot of it's about the oxalates and being, worried about those. So she's worried because she was eating spinach, almond, beets, dark chocolate, and now she's wondering if that's a bad idea.
Well, this is discussed with the research in McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion, under the chapter on urinary disease. Talks about oxalates. People worry about oxalates mainly because, there's an association between oxalates and a whole bunch of health problems, but mainly because of calcium oxalate kidney stones. 95% of the kidney stones that are passed in people who live on the Western diet are made of calcium and oxalate. So yes, spinach is very high in oxalates. So is all your green vegetables. They're loaded with oxalates. But if you look around the world, what you find is that people who eat a high oxalate diet, in other words, lots of vegetables and lots of starches, they have the lowest incidence of kidney stones. So you say, how do you explain this dichotomy where worldwide, historically, kidney stones, calcium oxalate kidney stones occur when people eat the rich Western diet? How does that figure when there's all this oxalate in vegetables? Well, the oxalate in vegetables is complexed, insoluble complex. That means the calcium and oxalate are so stuck together that they won't separate. And so they pass through the intestinal tract intact. they are not absorbable in the calcium oxalate state as they are in spinach and other green vegetables. So what happens? Well, what happens is when people eat fat, a process called soponification, you'd think it'd be spelled S-O-A-P, but it's not. It's S-O-P-O-N, soponification. Why would I say it should be spelled soap? It's because it's like what happens to you in the shower when you wash yourself with hard water. In other words, you have a lot of minerals that complex with the soap that you put on your skin. You know, it feels kind of greasy, soapy. When you have hard water, the soap complexes with the minerals, and so it becomes insoluble and it's washed away. So through saponification, when you put fat along with calcium oxalate, the fat causes the calcium and oxalate to disassociate. Now the calcium and oxalate can be absorbed through the gut into the bloodstream and form calcium oxalate stones. Unless you have the fats, you don't end up being able to uncouple the calcium oxalate. And so it just passes through the system. But if you eat the typical American diet with the amount of fat in it, that saponification occurs. You're going to look this up, aren't you? That's why I spelled it for you.
I did right here.
You look at
Toxic superfoods.
No, I don't know about that book. I forgot about that thing.
Okay.
If he spends his time talking about the dangers of oxalates, then he doesn't understand some basic vegetable science.
Yeah.
That is that calcium oxalate is complex, solid, unabsorbable in your vegetable foods. You've got to saponify the calcium oxalate to free up the oxalate so it's absorbed. Plain and simple. That's it. But then it makes clear, plain sense as to why calcium oxalate kidney stones occur when people eat the Western diet. You know, you're eating the calcium oxalate. Now, I had a urologist kind of argue with me, a guy interested in, well, he was a kidney specialist, argue with me. He says, well, don't you think it's important that you pay attention to the oxalates? Well, yeah, if you're going to be eating a high-fat Western diet, but why not go to the basic cause? You know, yeah, if you eat enough fat to saponify the calcium oxalate in your vegetables, yeah, you might be able to reduce the calcium oxalate by cutting down on spinach. But if you don't put the fat in your diet, you won't have the problem. It's in the book, McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion. I wrote it in 1984. The science is just as current today. In fact, it continues to support exactly what I told you. Look it up. Okay, Heather, that was pretty quick.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, this next question, this is from Elena. She wrote in, she's, let's see, very healthy, whole food, plant-based, exercises daily, has a good A1C, but her latest blood results showed a potassium level of 5.6. However, her creatinine levels are normal.
Yeah.
So her doctor wants her to stop eating foods which contain potassium, which is a big portion of what she eats. So she's wondering.
Oh, that's
what
all your
thoughts
fruits
are.
and vegetables. That's your fruits and vegetables. Your grains are lower potassium starches. So when I say grains, and of course this becomes important with kidney patients who've lost like 80, 90% of their kidney function, you have to pay attention to the potassium. And so you feed them starches that are grains like rice and corn and wheat and barley, because they're the lower potassium starches, whereas potatoes and sweet potatoes, they're high potassium starches, and they have to be stopped when you get down to a point where you've lost 90% of your kidneys are gone. All right, so here's a person who has a normal creatinine. Why would the potassium be 5.5? One say it should be between 4 and 5. When it gets to be 6, you get a little worried. 7, it gets to be high enough that the heart becomes irregular and you could die. Those are the values. Why 5.5? Well, the first thing that I would think about is, did the phlebotomist rupture your blood cells? It's an artifact that you see commonly when the blood cells get broken up, they release potassium at a higher level. So the first thing you want to do is you want to repeat your potassium levels. The second thing is, I don't care if you have a normal kidney function, I don't care how much high potassium foods you eat, you're never going to become toxic. You've got to have lost 90% of your kidney function before you get to a point where you can't excrete enough potassium. So I like I said, most I'd repeat your potassium levels. They're still in the range of 5, big deal. If they're, my guess is they'll be down to normal because you get a phlebotomist who won't break the blood cells. Okay, that's what I would do. Your creatinine's normal. Forget it. Your doctor's giving you the advice based upon what he or she got as an education during medical school and residency about nutrition, which is none. Your doctors learned virtually nothing. They learned a few biochemical formulas. That's what they learned. They learned nothing about taking care of a kidney patient, nothing about answering a question of what would I do if I had a potassium of 5.5. Anyway, you're dealing, the joke goes like this. If you go into a doctor's office and you ask for dietary advice, the kind of advice you get, the quality of advice you get depends upon whether or not the doctor's secretary is reading a diet book at the present time. Because if he or she is, then she's the diet expert in the office. He doesn't know anything about it. Challenge him. I don't know. It's sad. I got a bill passed, SB 380. You can look up. I got it passed. It was signed by Jerry Brown, the governor, in September of 2011. I wrote it. I'm not supposed to tell you that, but you'll see my fingerprints are all over it. It's a law that was passed that required doctors in California to learn about human nutrition. It required the 11 medical schools in California to teach human nutrition. That was in 2011. This is 12 years later, they've done virtually nothing except in a few schools like Loma Linda. They're trying. In fact, Loma Linda University sends their medical students to our 12-day program. So, some progress is being made, but it's just ridiculously slow. There are 500 hospitals that have noontime educational programs for the doctors. In this bill, SB 380, look it up. California SB 380, you'll find that this bill, by law now, it's a law, it's no longer a bill, not Senate bill anymore, it's a law, requires the 500 hospitals to teach human nutrition. What do they do? Well, maybe when I have some time, I'll tell you how they got around it. I learned a lot about politics.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from Ash. They've been eating mostly starch-based, well, about 80% of their meals, and they seem to get strong sugar cravings immediately after their meals and are wondering why that is.
They're not eating enough sugar. They're not eating enough sugar. That's the problem. You're sugar deprived because you're only 80%. I don't know what 80% means. What does 80% mean, Mary? I mean, good grief. Well, Heather, when people tell you 80%, what do you think? Until you tell me you're following the program like we teach it, I'm not interested in your mathematics. Plain and simple. All right. Your hunger drive is satisfied by carbohydrate. Even sugar satisfies the hunger drive. You're not eating enough potatoes and rice and corn to meet your needs for satisfaction, your hunger drive. And when you deprive yourself all through the meal, there's no carbohydrate in meat, none in poultry, none in fish, none in clams, none in lobsters. 2% of the calories of cheese have carbohydrate. When you eat those foods, which are typical American, probably 80% of what you really do eat, then you're not getting any sugar. The taste buds on the tip of your tongue taste starch and sugar. They want this. Everything about you is built to be satisfied by carbohydrate. And so you get to the end of the meal and you see this carbohydrate bomb sitting there. It's called a dessert. It's half sugar and it's half fat. It's a cake. It's a pie. It's a candy bar. And you go, oh, I finally found it. I chewed through all these steaks and cheese and chicken wings and so on. I finally looked for what I need. I finally found the sugar.
All right, I have another suggestion.
But,
If they're eating 80%, and we'll just give them that.
all right.
Okay.
You're so kind.
Well,
Okay, I know you have to start someplace.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any good to say.
What if they're eating 80%, but they're not eating enough? Like they're eating 80% and they're leaving the table when they're still hungry.
Yeah, well.
So then they haven't had enough sugar or carbohydrates
Right.
during their meal, so they would still be hungry for sugar. So maybe they're just not eating enough food.
That's a big problem for people who go on our diet. They think they should have portion size like they used to have. You need to eat twice as much food, at least. I was thinking of another thing, is they could be eating low carbohydrate vegan foods like Boca burgers, or other fake cheeses are 90% fat. There's no carbohydrate in it. So if you think you're following 80% the McDougall diet, maybe you meant 80% a vegan diet. And maybe you have the fake chickens and fake hot dogs and fake cheeses, and they're all protein and fat. There's no sugar. Maybe that's the problem. What do you think? Like that explanation?
That could be too.
All right. Anyway, the challenge is this: eat as much as you want, which may be twice as much as you used to. A starch-based diet. How much starch? We argue about this all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
90% of your plate. Mary's so kind. She's a pleaser. You ought to know that about Mary. She does.
Well, I'm sorry. When I look at your plate, it's
Yeah.
not 90% starch. It's maybe 75% starch.
Well, see, but the way I think of it is in terms of calories. You see the
Yeah, but
broccoli.
I look at
You look in terms of physical mass.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe, but as long as they know that, as long as they know that
calories,
I
when
do, it just goes
you
off my
don't
head.
either. Yeah,
All right,
look at what you're saying
Okay,
is you
what
want
do you-
them
what do
to
you want-
eyeball their plate.
I want them to have enough starch. I don't want them to undercut the starch, Mary, is what I don't want them to do.
I know.
So if I tell them 90%, they do 80%, then they're,
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm just going, what could you possibly overdo the starch? No. As long as you have a little bit of orange, a little bit of broccoli to get the vitamin A and vitamin C, you could eat 99% of your diet is starch. Just get a little A and C in. But that's what I'm trying to do, Mary, is I'm trying to get them to really look.
To really see that
Yeah.
that the starch is really important.
That's what I meant. Maybe you think I'm not being as descriptive as I should be.
Maybe.
Yeah. And so listen to Mary. But make sure you get the starch in.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from Missy Etling, wondering why their A1C is 6.3 when their fasting glucose is 82. Do they have prediabetes?
No, but by definition, you do. By definition, over 5.8% is considered prediabetes by some people, but not me. We don't know really what hemoglobin A1C means or what the ideal target is for A1C. We don't know how low it should be or how high it should be to reflect the best health for people. No, and you don't want to treat lab tests. If your blood sugar is normal, your hemoglobin A1C 6.3%, certainly fall in the range of perfectly good health to me. So it's, and you do remember, and I've shown you the 6 studies. I mean, you have watched my lecture on diabetes, haven't you, on YouTube? Or maybe you attended the series that we're putting on right now, when I gave 2 Saturdays ago a whole lecture on diabetes. I showed you the 6 studies where they tried to make hemoglobin A1C 6% using pills and shots and tests. They got it down to 6.3%, as I remember. That's how much they accomplished. And those that were aggressively treated ended up with worse results. In fact, just to emphasize, just to show you how concerning scientists were, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute stopped the Accord study 17 months early. The Accord study, they were trying to get the hemoglobin A1C down to 6%. They got it down to 6.3%, and they found an excessive rate of death and heart disease in those aggressively treated. So no, just ignore it. I think you'll repeat it another day and it'll be something else. And besides that, you don't have diabetes. But
A1C is something that came along, 30 years ago?
Yeah,
When I went to nursing school, I never heard of A1C.
Oh, we didn't hear about it. It was by 1984, because I put it in McDougall's
okay.
Medicine, The Challenging Second Opinion. I wrote about it there. I showed you some pictures of it, actually, what the hemoglobin molecule looks like with or without attachments to glucose. So,
But they never really talked about it that much
no,
until recently.
right. It's part of the sales pitch, Mary. But the sad thing is we don't know whether a hemoglobin A1C of 8% is the right one, or 7%, or 8.5%, or 10%, or 6%. All we know is 6% is too low. That's all we know based on the research. We haven't found out what the correct number is for a hemoglobin A1C. We just know that 6% is too low. Because all 6 studies, but 3 that was published in 2008 in the New England Journal of Medicine clearly showed that if you try and make your hemoglobin A1C 6% with medication, only with medication now, not somebody just walking down the street, apparently healthy, but on medication, you increase your risk of sudden death, weight gain, hypoglycemic reactions, death from heart disease, overall death, you name it, just dead. Don't be aggressive. You think I'm sure that the truth is stranger than fiction. It is. It really is. I don't think you can believe some of the things I say. Or why doesn't everybody know this? Why isn't my doctor telling me this? Well, excuse me. Present the research to your doctor and ask him or her, is this true? Where do you find the research?
Well, don't you think that a lot of doctors, I realize that some of the newer doctors are a lot more open to all these ideas.
Okay.
But some of the older doctors, once they get their medical license, they never pick up another research article again.
It happens.
They go on whatever they were taught in medical school, and that's it.
That could be part of the problem. But unfortunately, the medical schools still teach. This is what the medical schools teach: is they teach a trade. Like, for example, orthopedics is a trade. Ophthalmology is a trade. And these trades, you can go and you really help people. You fix their bones, replace cataracts. These are important trades. The other thing they do is they teach you to pass the boards. That's all the schools are interested in, is how many students they get to pass the boards. The boards had, back when I looked at it, back when I was training, fewer than 3% of the questions had anything to do with nutrition. And they had to do with biochemical formulas, not dietary therapy. Today, it's the same. If they put questions on nutrition on the medical boards, then the schools would teach it. They don't. And unless they're forced, they won't change. What's the question?
I think you answered it.
Whatever.
Good. Very thorough, as always. Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from Dahlia. She wants to know what your opinion is on the Prenuvo body scans. Do you recommend them?
It's new to me. Maybe I'll have to look it up.
What?
Prenuvo body scan.
Prenuvo? Okay.
Well, if they're detect cancer, it ain't gonna work. If it's I don't know what's to detect.
Well, let's find out.
What body scan would you recommend?
Only the one I can do with my own eyeballs. As a doctor.
Oh, here we go.
What you'll quickly learn.
Prenuvo scan.
What you'll quickly learn, just while you're putting that together, Mary.
Right.
What you quickly learn is that if you stop and listen to your patient, and involve that with that listening is to look at them. If you don't understand what's wrong with a person by the time you're finished with the history, which involves looking at the person, doing an eyeball scan, then you don't know what's wrong with the person or how to fix them. You're not going to figure it out by any further testing. In most cases, the history, a competent doctor at the end of a history with an eyeball exam will be able to tell what the problem is and what the direction of therapy ought to be. You don't need any tests. You don't need any scans. You don't need blood tests. You got to figure it out. If you're a competent doctor.
They are whole body MRI scans.
Yeah, well.
Screen for 500 cancers and diseases.
Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for. In studies on CAT scans, which is what they're talking about, for every 2,000 CAT scans, they find 1,300 abnormalities that you would have never known about.
Listen to this, though. Reality check. The American College of Preventive Medicine says medical professional societies do not recommend whole body scanning for asymptomatic people. The scans are likely to result in little benefit to patients, cause significant harms, and waste money and healthcare resources.
I put it much more succinctly, didn't I?
Yeah.
You be
But
careful.
it's right
Be
there.
careful what you ask for, because you can imagine if you say you went in for, a CAT scan of your kidney, and they took a little picture of your lung, just by mistake, and they found a little abnormality in the lung tissue. What do you think is going to happen to you? You're going to be threatened, challenged, advised to have further testing, which involves biopsies, either from the outside or from the inside, the bronchial tubes. Plus, you're starting down a road of removing a lung. Yeah, you don't do as well with one lung missing. You have a little trouble breathing. Yes, you do. And the other complications related to that kind of surgery. This is a big deal, having a lung cancer removed. And survival benefits? No. And I'd be glad to argue with any radiologist who wants to argue. Yeah, I know you guys are doing scanning procedures on precancerous lesions, and you think you can prolong the lives. Maybe, but they're precancers. And again, there's no research that says that actual lung cancer, that's really lung cancer, taking it out will prolong a person's life. And there's no reason to believe it would. But your doctor is going to try and convince you that it will. Be careful what you ask for. We're getting way off the discussion.
Yeah, we were talking about something else.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tell you see why I picked her as a partner 52 years ago. Can you all see that? Good
For
grief.
so many reasons.
Yeah, it's not just the good food, folks.
You guys make a great team. Okay, next question. This is from Jim. He wrote in, he was watching a webinar about neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and there was a doctor on talking about the keto diet and ketosis and how helpful that is for Alzheimer's patients. Any comments on that?
These keto people are absolutely nuts. They claim almost anything can be helped with a keto diet. And they cherry pick the evidence. And what they do is they blow it into a big story, which, by the way, the meat, dairy, and egg industry are not unhappy about. It's nonsense. And when reviewers get together and look at the research, like, for example, there's a big article published in one of our, I think it's Lancet Oncology, which they compared keto diets as far as cancer goes to high carbohydrate diets, which of course is what I recommend. Hands down, we beat them in terms of cancer patients, prevention and treatment. Hands down. And I'll be happy to provide that for you. But if you attend next Saturday my cancer lecture, which I'm giving next Saturday, it's one of the slides that I'm presenting. It's that reference. Not that I want to talk you into showing up. We have a great crowd that attends these lectures, and maybe we'll give them again. I hope. It's been really fun. We've done 3 out of the 5 lectures so far. We've got 2 more to go. Next one's on cancer. So no, it's nonsense. These keto people are absolutely bizarre. They're involved in conspiracy theories, is what they are. And again, I'll point out to you that the meat, dairy, and egg industry are not unhappy about their message, because they sell this dangerous food. Not just dangerous to people, which it is: heart disease, cancer, constipation, indigestion, bone loss, kidney damage, not just the damage it does to people, but think about your causes as far as animal cruelty are concerned. Think about, what is it, 80 billion animals are killed every year so that you can cover the dead animals up with steak sauce and eat them. That's the only way you get to eat them. You got to cover them up with salt, barbecue sauce, sweet and sour sauce. Otherwise, you can't get them down. They're too disgusting. Think about the poor animals. And by the way, didn't I mention in our introduction about MER, which you can look up, right? www.mer.org.
MEER.
Thank you, Mary. MEER. Didn't I mention to you that we took the effort, my whole website, Mary and I and Heather built this site for you. called McDougallFoundation.org, and it teaches you how to eat a diet that's planet friendly. And over 50% of the greenhouse gases are produced by the, listen to my words, watch my lips, the animal like in cow, pig, chicken, fish industries, over half of the greenhouse gases. And you can reduce your CO2 output by 80% overnight by changing to a vegan diet. The McDougall diet, I hate to say it, but I think it's a vegan diet. Probably is. Don't tell anybody it's a vegan diet, though. You can have turkey on Thanksgiving. Yes, you can. It's not a vegan diet. You can wear leather shoes if you want. Boy, I'm in trouble now. I'm in trouble.
Make some people mad with that.
Well, anyway, next question.
Okay, let's see. Lots coming in. Here's one about diabetes. Sally wrote in. She has a niece who has, this is a new one. She has Modi diabetes. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't. But I'll tell you, I'm glad I do this 5 o'clock show every Sunday night, Pacific time, 5 p.m.
But I don't remember what it was. Shoot.
YouTube Live, because you guys challenge me and I have to look things up, and I enjoy that very much. But no,
she runs marathons. She's not overweight.
Diabetes.
Uh-huh.
It stands for maturity onset diabetes.
Why didn't you say so?
What? She didn't put that in.
Why didn't you just maturity onset diabetes in the young? Okay.
Yeah.
Maturity onset diabetes, we used to call that adult onset diabetes up until 20 years ago.
And they actually talked about it. They say it's type 2 diabetes, but it was found in young people.
I know. Okay. So back in the old days, I started this business like in 1968. That's when I started. Back in the old days, we used to divide diabetes into adult and childhood, which are type 2 and type 1. Now, the reason we used to differentiate it between adult and childhood is because childhood type of diabetes was most commonly the kind where the pancreas is destroyed, and you have to take insulin. Type 2 diabetes, the pancreas is working overtime and often producing as much, if not twice as much insulin as somebody who's normal. So this type occurred in adults, the type 2. It's due to being overweight, and it's cured essentially 100% of the time, if it's type 2, by losing weight. If you go through bariatric surgery, you go on a low-carb diet, you wire your teeth together, you go to a prisoner of war camp, I don't care. It's virtually 100% curable. Anyway, what's happened is our kids are so fat. 17% of the kids are obese. Another 20% are overweight, that we've developed children where they now have a higher chance of having type 2 diabetes than type 1.
So now they have to have a new name for it.
Well, I like that name.
Modi diabetes.
What does that say again? What does it say?
It says
It says the same thing I just told you. Maturity onset diabetes, all diabetes in kids.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It does get fancy on me, Mary. No wonder I'm behind. You could criticize me. You can tell your friends Dr. McDougall's out of date because he didn't know.
They make a big deal about saying it is different than the juvenile type of diabetes.
Right. Of course it is.
Because they actually talk about Modi. It does produce insulin, but type 1 doesn't.
Well, there you go. Looks like I bet
bet
my explanation was clearer, simpler, and easy to explain than that nonsense. It's adult type diabetes in children is what it is, because they're just too fat. And why are they too fat? Come on now, you know that you wouldn't be attending this show.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Okay, this is a good one. This is from Ruth. She wrote in, she's 74. She's had persistent hypertension for 49 years, is on various high blood pressure medication. She saw you on YouTube, learned about chlorthalidone, has started that, and her BP has now been normal for 3 months. So she wants to say thank you for that. Very thrilled. Now she wants to eliminate lisinopril and wants to know if you have any suggestions on what to do about that.
Well, when I care for a patient who comes in to see me with hypertension like this woman, and on lisinopril, what I do is stop the lisinopril day one. Lisinopril is not a good drug. One of the major side effects is you have a chronic cough with it. There's a whole list of side effects with it. And so lisinopril is called an ACE inhibitor. Now, they made another class of drugs called angiotensin receptor blockers. They're not the same as ACE inhibitors. They all end with sartan of some kind. That's how you see the name of it, angiotensin receptor blockers. Anyway, what I do is I just stop the lisinopril, watch the blood pressure, probably daily for a while. After a couple of weeks, if the blood pressure is still 140 over 90 or 150 over 100, I might think of bumping up the dose of hydrochlorothiazide a little bit. But you know what? Almost never is that the case. Dr. Linda and I take people off blood pressure pills all day long. We rarely have to restart them, but we can because we're licensed medical doctors, board certified family practitioner, board certified internist. We have prescription pads. We're not going to do anything foolish. But anyway, that's how you handle it. The only way you're going to find out whether you need more blood pressure medication or not is to stop what you would like to stop and then increase what you'd like to increase. The goal is to get off all blood pressure pills. You don't want to have a blood pressure below 140 over 85 millimeters of mercury because you increase your risk of heart attacks, strokes, and death. Because you overly treat the blood pressure, you lower it too much. So you don't have the perfusion pressure to the brain and the heart, and you have more heart attacks and strokes if you're aggressive. The target blood pressure, you want to be my target. That's what you try and end up with on medication. Off medication, your blood pressure can be 80 over 40. I don't care, unless you're bleeding to death. On medication, your target is a blood pressure of between 150 and 160 over 90 to 100. You don't want to be above that. You want to add blood pressure pills. You don't want to be below that. You need to reduce the medication. That's what the science says.
But you would never recommend that she does this all by herself anyway.
She's over 21.
Well, I mean, what you recommend is she has somebody.
Yeah, I would. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I'd recommend that you do this under doctor's supervision. Certainly
yeah.
do. But she did it before. She got her
know.
doctor to write her hydrochlorothiazide for her. Otherwise, she couldn't have got it.
Okay,
So I assumed she had a doctor working
okay,
with
all
her.
right.
But
yes,
thanks, Mary.
You're right.
We want to make sure. But people actually stop their medications without
I know they do, but
without their
that's
doctor's.
not what you recommend.
That's not what I recommend for sure. And really, I mean, you could. I don't know. Never mind. Let's just go on to the next question.
Okay, here we go. Next question. This is from Joshi. They've been on the McDougall diet for 7 years. Their uric acid is 7.81. What should they do?
Well, first of all, every doctor knows and should practice that you do not treat asymptomatic hyperuricemia. Okay, you're not supposed to treat it.
And that's what that is.
That's what it is.
Hyperuricemia.
Hyperuricemia, elevated uric acid. Asymptomatic means she knows that there's no symptoms. What would symptoms be? Gout or kidney stones. So now it's not asymptomatic. Now you'd use something like a drug called allopurinol, which decreases the production of uric acid. Toxic drug. Oh, be careful. Be careful. And what you want to do is you want to stop the production of purines. Purines, okay? DNA and RNA, your genetic material. You remember the double helix, okay? Watson and Crick, you remember all that stuff? All right, the double helix. DNA and RNA break down into nucleic acids, which break down into uric acid. So if you eat less genetic material, that means less protein, that means fewer animal products, then you're going to have less DNA, less RNA to convert into uric acid. Gout is caused by eating a rich diet, particularly animal foods. So first of all, don't treat it. Every doctor knows this or should know it if it's asymptomatic. If you have gout or you have uric acid-based kidney stones, then you might want to look at more into drug therapies. I would have to do some careful consideration before I prescribe that for a patient. It's a toxic drug, allopurinol, and that's the treatment.
Thank you. Next question. This is from Zeba, and she's wanting me to ask you to talk about David Sinclair.
Upton Sinclair. I know Upton Sinclair.
Oh, maybe that's,
I don't know David Sinclair. Why should I know David Sinclair?
I don't know. I thought it would have been one of your, but maybe it's Upton Sinclair. I knew I recognized the Sinclair.
Well, Upton Sinclair wrote the book, The Jungle. And the only thing I remember from the book is that you can't teach a man something contrary to his celery. In other words, you can't teach something that, say, for example, you're a butcher, you sell meat. You can't teach the butcher that eating meat is bad for you. Upton Sinclair said you can't teach a man something that's contrary to his celery.
This is something else.
David
This is the
Sinclair.
David Sinclair lifespan book.
I don't know anything about it. But unless he recommends a starch-based diet as the foundation, I'm not interested. Boy, am I
It's called
close.
Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to.
Right. Oh, God, I love these people who say I'm going to live to be 180 if I just take their supplement. Oh, come on, guys. There's
Okay.
there's one born every day. You know what they're called, right? There's one born every day. And somebody tells you they're going to cause you to live X amount of time, which is outside the normal lifespan of a human being, which happens to be 85 years. That's the lifespan of a human being, the average lifespan. And I can tell you where all that figures come from, but I'm not going to do it today. But you can figure it. No, you can't figure it out because we haven't done that lecture on YouTube yet.
No.
But we will do it someday. We've done it privately. People who have taken the private classes have learned about doubling times of cells and what the lifespan of a human is. And I give a whole talk called Aging Gracefully and How to Prevent Dementia. It's a good talk. We should do that sometime, Heather.
Got lots of things on the schedule. Okay, let's see. We've got 4 minutes left, so I think I can squeeze in a few questions.
All right.
This next one's from Rayanne. Her husband's on the McDougall program, but he's quite thin and takes insulin for type 2 diabetes. He's not overweight. He's a mail carrier and walks a lot. How can he control his blood sugar?
He's not type 2. He's type 1.5. So what he may need is he may need a little bit of insulin. I usually prescribe Lantus, which is a long-acting insulin. You take 5 units, 10 units at night, and it gives you enough insulin to push fat into the fat cells. So pills, you cannot do it with pills. So, I do not use glucophage, metformin, or sulfonylureas. They don't work. They're not right. They're inappropriate. You just give a little bit of long-acting insulin called Lantus, and he'll do just fine. The fact that he's active and not in the hospital means he doesn't have type 1. The fact that he's active and really thin means he doesn't have type 2. Type 2 is always curable with weight loss. In between this is the spectrum between type 1 and type 2. He has type 1.5 diabetes. His pancreas does not produce enough insulin, keeps him out of the hospital, but it doesn't prevent weight loss or cause him to gain weight. So he needs a little extra insulin. Next question. You didn't know I was going to be so fast, did you?
I know, right? Okay, wait, there was a good one. Airy ozone. What are the long-term effects of taking hydrochloroquine rather than the occasional Tylenol for what my doctor thinks is lupus?
Oh, chloroquine. It's called Plaquenil.
Hydrochloroquine?
Plaquenil is the time-honored drug to treat lupus. Why? Because it does less harm than most of the drugs. It doesn't do much good. The benefits of Plaquenil are, questionable at best. It's a relatively non-toxic drug. It was originally used to treat malaria. And I don't know if it works. If it worked, I would ask you to take it for symptom relief. If it didn't work or you couldn't tell, I'd ask the doctor for a break to see whether or not you get by with just a little Tylenol to keep your symptoms under control. I would think, I don't know, Tylenol has its toxicity too, but neither one of the drugs is a cure for the problem, and both are symptomatic therapy, and neither of them are very effective. Hey, why don't you change your diet and get rid of your lupus? We have patients who do that, It takes about 4 months. It doesn't happen within 7 to 10 days like our rheumatoid patients. It takes a little longer to get your handles on lupus. But usually within 4 months, most people are dramatically better, if not, I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Remission.
Remission and no more need of managed care. I'm not going to say it, not after this month. Anyway, folks, you're going to spread that video I showed you around, which is MEER.org, MEE, 2 E's, R.org. You know, let's just start talking. Let's just start talking about it. We got to start talking about it. Believe me, it's not going to be out of your consciousness. I know that, you know that. So let's start looking to any possible solutions. We can decouple CO2 production from the heat of the planet because people aren't going to stop burning the fossil fuels. I know that. They're not going to stop eating meat. I know that. So I want a future for this planet. I know how we can do it. I could be wrong, but I'm a pretty good guesser. So those of you who know me know that I can pretty much sort out nonsense. And this is not nonsense. It's not easy, but saving the world shouldn't be easy, should it?
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. Thanks for the hour, Mom and Dad. That went by fast, as always. Great conversation. Thank you all for being here, for tuning in. We'll see you all next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we've got going on, Dad?
Yeah, I do. First of all, let people know that we have a 12-day program in October. And then we have we're finishing the last 2 out of the 5 series, and you can join us if you want for that, for the last 2. The next one is on cancer. The one after that is on nutrition, dietary deceptions. And then September 11th, I'll be in Palm Springs at the JW Marriott, receiving an award called the Luminary Award from the Plantation Society. It's a whole bunch of doctors, all the people you have ever wanted to know are going to be there. You know, I think Dr. Arnie should be.
To the public
It is,
also.
yeah.
It's a plantation conference.
Yeah, you can
So
come.
anybody can go.
You know, Elaine and Jerry are going, who are good friends who don't have anything to do with the medical business. And you could sign up. And anyway, they'll have good food there, and Mary and I will be there. And it likely will be the last time Mary and I appear in public. You can kind of plan it. We'll do lots of videos, YouTube type of things, but you know, getting on an airplane, traveling around, I've done enough of that. So we'll be there September 10 and 11 at the JW Marriott Hotel, and you can sign up for the Plantation Conference. But we'll be running a 12-day program every month or two, depending upon the demand, every month or two for who knows how long. And that is a time where you can spend a lot of luxury, relaxed time with Mary and I and Heather. That 12 days, we come into your homes, we talk to you, get you through the tough part, and so does the rest of our staff. So think about it. It's a big deal. And by the way, you should know, just as closing remarks, that everything that I've tried to teach you is free on the website. Okay? All the science, all the information, or maybe it'll cost you $10 to buy one of the books. You know, a whole 12-day program is there free. So there's nothing that should hold you back. You can get well starting right now. You know, let this be your last destructive meal for you and the planet. I think so.
It's a good way to end. Thanks, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall and
Okay,
Mary.
can't
Thanks,
hear you.
everyone. See you next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Take care.
Okie dokie. Bye-bye.
Okay.